Hello everyone, and welcome to a deep dive into the fascinating world of Japanese aviation during World War II. Unlike most nations, Japan had two entirely separate air forces, the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force and the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service. Each had its own planes, priorities, and strategies, creating one of the most complex aerial arsenals of the era. Japanese aircraft, built by legendary companies like Mitsubishi, Nakajima, and Kawasaki, were initially designed with a clear philosophy, prioritized long range and incredible maneuverability above all else. This meant sacrificing armor and survivability, a trade-off that brought stunning early victories but proved costly as the war progressed and Allied technology caught up. Let's start with the fighters of the Imperial Japanese Navy. And of course, that means talking about the most iconic Japanese plane of the war, the Mitsubishi A6M Zero. When it debuted in 1940, the Zero was a world beater. It had an astonishing range and could outturn almost anything in the sky. However, its weakness was its greatest strength. The lightweight design meant no armor for the pilot and no self-sealing fuel tanks. Once Allied pilots developed new tactics, like the thatch weave, and introduced more powerful aircraft, the Zero's vulnerability became a fatal flaw. As the war shifted in high altitude, American bombers began raiding Japan. The Navy needed a different kind of fighter. This was a land-based interceptor built not for dogfighting, but for pure speed and a rapid climb rate to reach the B-29s. While it was plagued with engine problems throughout its service, the Raiden was a potent threat when it worked correctly. Another powerful late-war Navy fighter was the Kawanishi N1KJ Shiden, or Violet Lightning. Interestingly, it was developed from a float plane, but this land-based version was a beast. Heavily armed with cannons, it was one of Japan's best interceptors, capable of taking on American Hellcats and Corsairs on equal terms. The main problem was maintenance and the declining quality of Japanese production. The intended successor to the legendary Zero was the Mitsubishi A7M Zero, or Hurricane. In theory, it was a superb aircraft, addressing many of the Zero's shortcomings with better speed, armor, and armament. But development was slow, and by the time prototypes were flying, it was too late to have any impact on the war. Now, let's turn to the Imperial Japanese Army's fighters. Their early workhorse was the Nakajima Ki-43, a fixed-gear monoplane that excelled in maneuverability, especially in the skies over China. But by the time of the Pacific War, it was largely obsolete, lacking speed and firepower. Its replacement was the Nakajima Ki-43 Hayabusa, or Peregrine Falcon, which became the Army's most produced fighter. Much like the Navy's Zero, the Ki-43 was built for agility and long range. It was a nimble and effective dogfighter in the early years, but struggled against the heavier, more powerful Allied fighters that appeared later in the war. A significant design shift for the Army came with the Kawasaki Ki-61 Hime, or Swallowing Swallow. This fighter stood out because it used a liquid-cooled inline engine, similar to the German Messerschmitt Bf 109. This gave it better speed and performance at high altitudes compared to its radial engine counterparts. However, the complex engine was a maintenance nightmare for ground crews who were used to simpler designs. This aircraft was a true powerhouse, combining speed, a fantastic climb rate, and heavy armament. The Judy was a versatile plane, serving as a dive bomber and reconnaissance aircraft. As the war turned desperate, many were converted for kamikaze missions. For torpedo attacks, the Navy relied on the Nakajima B5N-K. Its successor, the Nakajima B6N-GL, was faster and carried a more powerful torpedo. Reconnaissance was critical, and here Japan had one of the best aircraft of its type, the Mitsubishi Ki-43 Hayabusa. This twin-engine Army reconnaissance plane was so fast and flew so high that for much of the war, Allied fighters simply couldn't catch it. Japan also excelled in designing massive flying boats for long-range maritime patrols. The Kawanishi H6K Mavis and its successor, the Kawanishi H8K Emily, were giants of the sky. The H8K in particular was considered one of the finest flying boats of the war, boasting incredible range, a heavy defensive armament, and a large payload. It could stay airborne for over 24 hours, patrolling vast stretches of the ocean. To support its sprawling empire, Japan needed transport aircraft. The Mitsubishi Ki-57, the Takakawa Ki-54, and the Nakajima L2D, which was a license-built copy of the American DC-3, were essential for moving troops and supplies, and to train the thousands of pilots needed. Aircraft like the Yokosuka K-5Y and Takakawa Ki-9 were produced in huge numbers. However, as the war dragged on, fuel shortages and combat losses meant pilot training quality declined sharply. As defeat became inevitable, Japan turned to experimental and special attack aircraft. The Nakajima Ki-43 was Japan's first jet-powered aircraft. Inspired by the German Me-262, it only flew once before the war ended. There was also the Mitsubishi J8M Zero, a rocket-powered interceptor based on the German Me-163 Comet, which saw limited testing. And then there were the suicide weapons. The most infamous was the Yokosuka MXY-7 Ocha, a rocket-powered human-guided flying bomb carried into battle by a mother bomber. More advanced conventional designs, like the Canard Wing Kyushu J-7W Shinden Interceptor, reached the prototype stage but never saw combat. In conclusion, the story of Japanese aircraft in World War II is a story of incredible innovation and critical limitations. The initial focus on maneuverability and range brought breathtaking success, but the neglect of armor and pilot protection, combined with a limited industrial base, ultimately proved fatal. While Japan's engineers created some of the most brilliant and ambitious aircraft of their time, they couldn't overcome the overwhelming production power and rapid technological adaptation of the Allies. Their legacy is a vital and dramatic chapter in the history of aerial warfare. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this overview, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into military history. See you next time.